What's up guys, I'm back with another video this week, and this week we are doing a top 5 list of things that I wish I would have done differently if I started reefing again. Also, make sure you stick around for number 5. I think that one's probably going to be the most controversial one, so you won't want to miss it. My name is Ryan, aka Lo-Fi Fish Tanks. I started taking care of fish tanks roughly 10 years ago. I started with freshwater and had everything from goldfish to pufferfish over the course of nearly 10 years. It wasn't until I graduated physical therapy school that I decided to finally make the jump to saltwater. I had dreamt of owning a reef tank for many years, but the thought of moving constantly and having to break down and re-put up a reef tank just didn't seem like the right option. And so after nearly a year and a half of reefing, I've made many mistakes, and today's video is going to be 5 of those things that I feel like all of you guys should know and that you can avoid, and that way you can start your reefing journey off the right way. So let's jump straight into number 1. And that is, pick your tank's location wisely. We chose to put our tank in the living room of our apartment at first, and that room got a lot of sunlight, and as a result, algae was constantly growing all over the rocks, and especially all over the glass on that side where most of the sunlight came in. And it was always a chore to have to scrape the glass, make sure it was clean, because if you left it for more than a week, it just got out of control. So with that being said, make sure you choose your tank's location wisely. Alright, on to number 2. This is listen to one person. Now, hear me out on this. This may be very controversial because of the fact that for most hobbies, you want to try and learn as much as you can, and I totally agree with that. But in reefing, this can cause many issues. Every experienced reefer has their style of doing things. For example, some reefers feed very heavily in their tanks and rely very heavily on mechanical filtration and other forms of filtration. On the other hand, some experienced reefers will feed less. That way they don't have to rely on filtration as much, or they may just rely on just cleanup crew and not much in terms of like a sump or anything like that. Now, the issue comes in when you try to listen to both of those people at the same time. For example, if you were to combine feeding heavy but not doing as much filtration as the person who typically feeds heavy, you may take that advice of them saying, look at my tank, I feed very heavy and I don't really have to worry about algae or anything like that, but you don't realize how much filtration they actually have. This would spell disaster for your tank and is a ticking time bomb for algae outbreaks. That happened to me. So my advice would be choose one person that you trust in the hobby or that you know pretty well and try to replicate exactly what they did. That way you can get off on the right foot, get success, get your confidence up, and then you can start to experiment with different things. But in the beginning, try to just copy one other person and stick to that for a while. Alright, on to number 3, and that is look closely at what you are about to buy. Early on, it can become very easy to get mesmerized by the colors of saltwater compared to freshwater fish. But it's important to tame your excitement. Whether it's a fish, invert, or coral, you want to make sure that you're looking closely at it to see, is it normal? Ask the shop, has it been eating well? Ask them when the shipment came in. Is the fish showing stress colors or other signs of ailments? In terms of corals, is it open all the way? Are there pests around it? Are there pests in the tank that it's in? It's extremely important, especially early on in this hobby, to get into the habit of looking at what you're actually about to buy, because you're going to set yourself up for success and not have die-off from livestock early on and then be trying to figure out and triangulate, well, what was the cause? When in reality, the cause could have been you just didn't buy a healthy one to begin with. Alright, this leads me into number 4, which is get to know people in the hobby. This is actually one of the main reasons that I started this channel among all my other social media channels. Especially when you go to places like the forums, where you have a very odd mixture of beginner reefers, intermediate reefers, and then experienced reefers. It's hard to get advice that's very applicable to you as a beginner. And to be honest, on the forums, most of the conversations go the same way, and usually just ends up everybody arguing with each other, and you don't really get a solid answer at the end of the conversation. I wanted to start making content because A, I love taking care of aquariums, and B, I wanted to create a safe space for all the beginners that want to start taking care of whether it be saltwater or freshwater tanks, and have the ability to replicate what I do and learn from my mistakes. That way they can start off on the right foot. Alright, number 5. Now this one might get some people fired up, but I wish I would have started with a bigger tank. But on the other hand, you may want to follow my path and start with a smaller tank first. Now why? Now I started with a 24-gallon all-in-one reef tank, and to be completely honest, the learning curve was extremely steep. Every mistake that I made early on was amplified because instead of having 100 gallons of water to dilute my mistakes, I only had 24. When something goes wrong in a small tank, you only really have like a couple hours to a couple days to react to it, whereas with the bigger tank you may have days if not weeks. For example, I dealt with green hair algae very early on, and it was nearly impossible to get rid of, and I swear it's like it popped up in a matter of like 2 days. Before I knew it, the whole tank was just a big bushy green mess. I'm serious, you can go check it out on my TikTok. If you scroll all the way down to the beginning of my TikTok, literally my whole tank was just algae. Now if it was a bigger tank, I probably would have picked up on the warning signs maybe a little bit earlier and would have had more time to react. Additionally, the problem probably wouldn't have gotten out of control nearly as quick as it did in my small tank. Now with a bigger tank comes more expense. You have more rocks, more substrate, more water, more salt. Everything is 3, 4, 5 times as much. It really depends on your situation, but what I will say is if you go with a smaller tank, I would start doing your research early and make sure that you don't make any disastrous mistakes. Plus, if you want to double or triple check your plan, you can either comment down below or shoot me a message, and I'd be happy to let you copy my plan. Aside from my mistakes, obviously. So, there you have it. My 5 mistakes that I wish I would have done differently when I first started reefing. What would you have done differently? Leave a comment down below, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn that bell on so you never miss a future upload. Peace.